Hi, Salam Alaikum. I was chatting with my team in our store, and suddenly when the Christian barista asked me, is it logic that your prophet married his son's wife? So, to be honest, he shocked me, and I said, no, this is not true at all. And here's 1,000 riyal if you can prove it. Which guided me and lead me to study and investigate more about this story, which I'm going to tell it to you now. Zayd bin Haritha is one of the Qahtan tribe branch called Banu Kalb. He was kidnapped from his own mother when he was 8 years old in the north of Arabian Peninsula, which called Dawmat al-Jannah. And they sold him into slavery. He was sold in the great trade of Rukab market. They sold him to Hakim bin Hizam, the nephew of Khadija. And so he becomes Khadija's servant. When Khadija marries the Prophet, peace and blessing of God be upon him, Khadija gifted this servant to the Prophet Muhammad. Again, this all in the Jahiliyyah, the pre-Islamic life. Its father, his name is Haritha. Of course, he's frantically looking for his son. And it so happens that during one of the Hajj season, somebody saw Zayd. In their return from Hajj, they told Zayd's father, we think we found your son. He's a slave to one of the great grandson of Abdul Muttalib. His name is Mohammed. So the father, overjoyed, he gathers all of the money he possesses. He goes with his brother to Prophet and says, we want to take our son back, who was unjustly stolen or kidnapped and sold into slavery. We will give you any ransom you want, but please be generous with us. Then the Prophet said, it's up to him. I will leave the matter to him. And if he chooses you, then I will send him back to you without any ransom. But if he chooses me, then I can never turn away from somebody who has turned to me. And the Prophet asked Zayd, do you recognize these two men? Then he said, yes, I do. This is my father and this is my uncle. So the Prophet said, they have come requesting that you go back with them. And I have left the matter to you. If you want, you may go back with them. And if you want, you may remain with me. Clearly, the Prophet had the abundance and paternal love. He doesn't want to let him go, and he cannot say no. Because morally, they have a point. So he leaves back to him. But instantaneously, Zayd says, I can never choose anyone over you. You are to me more than a father and an uncle combined. Well, I will say this is unnatural, except if this man is a prophet. Because only who has the same level of spirituality as a prophet will trump the bond of fatherhood. Look how the bond of the prophet are stronger than the bond of the father. And when Zayd said this, the prophet stood up, took him by his hand, and he made an announcement. O people of Mecca, I want all of you to testify that from now on, Zayd is a free man, and I have adopted him as my son. He will inherit from me, and I will inherit from him. And also, he became known as Zayd ibn Muhammad, the Muhammad loved. And he did this in front of the father in order to bring some peace to the father's heart. But God wanted to put an end of this adoption issue. 30 years after this incident, Allah said, call them by their fathers.
ودعوهم لآبائهم هو أقسط عند الله فإن لم تعلموا آباءهم فإخوانكم في الدين ومواليكم وليس عليكم جناح فيما أَخْطَأْتُم بِهِ وَلَٰكِن مَّا تَعَمَّدَتْ قُلُوبُكُمْ ۚ وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورًا رَّحِيمًا.
Zayd became Muslim at the age of 30 and immigrated with Muhammad and the Prophet Muhammad to Al-Medina. And then this leads us to another story in the 5th year of the Hijrah, when the Prophet encouraged him to marry his own cousin, Zaynab bin Jahsh. He attempted to make this marriage a success, but she refused to marry a slave to various the lineage. And she said, "Is it an order from you or from the God?" So the verse was revealed.
وما كان لمؤمن ولا مؤمنة إذا قضى الله ورسوله أمرا أن يكون لهم الخيرة من أمرهم ومن يعص الله ورسوله فقد ضل ضلالا مبينا.
Then she consented to marriage. He intended to remove all element of slavery from Zayd. As you know, the marriage did not work out, not due to the fault of one of the parties, but rather due to the wisdom of the God. Even they did not feel connected, so he complained to the Prophet of God, and the Prophet said to him, "Keep your wife." So while they are looking for separation, God orders his Prophet to marry Zaynab. All these events were formulated a new legislation of humanity, which is to nullifying the custom of adoption and link it to the lineage. However, the Prophet exaggerated from his fear of Arab by marrying his son's wife, and kept concealing Zayd by saying, "Keep your wife." And also, he averred saying that he had instructed Zayd to divorce his wife in order to marry her, as the Orientalists saying now. So God rebuked him for that.
وإذ تقول للذي أنعم الله عليه وأنعمت عليه أمسك عليك زوجك واتق الله وتخفي في نفسك ما الله مبديه وتخشى الناس والله أحق أن تخشاه فلما قضى زيد منها وطرا زوجناكها لكي لا يكون على المؤمنين حرج في أزواج أدعيائهم إذا قضوا منهن وطرا وكان أمر الله مفعولا.
When Zaynab was divorced, and then the waiting period was over, he pointed to Zayd and said to him, "Go to Zaynab and propose to her for me." Watch with me how he asked the divorced man to propose to the divorced woman. This is evidence that Zayd had lost his heart to her. So Zayd went to Zaynab and said to her, "Rejoice, Zaynab. The Prophet of God will propose to you." She said, "Wallah, I will not answer until I prostrate to God." Thanks to God. When Zayd conveyed the news to the Prophet of God, the Prophet went into her house without knocking the door, because the marriage was proceed from the sky. And there was much talk about the Prophet marriage to his son's wife, and due to that, the verse was revealed.
ما كان محمد أبا أحد من رجالكم ولكن رسول الله وخاتم النبيين وكان الله بكل شيء عليما.
Zaynab brags to the Prophet's wives that she is the only one who married her by the Lord, not by her father or brothers. At the end of this video, I want to thank you for listening to me and asking you, do you know any holy book or any legislation care about the humanity like what we have in the Quran? Thank you.